All right, everyone, welcome back to YouTube on here and diving into a topic. A good friend of mine, he read my book, Design the Man Within. If you have not read it, if you haven't purchased it, make sure you guys go to Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Target, wherever you guys get your books, and buy Design the Man Within. It's really something that I put out in hopes to help the everyday man really find that better version of himself while also retaining a lot of those things that he loves about himself. So designing the man within is all about how you consciously and with awareness design that man that you show up as every single day. So with that being said, a friend of mine reached out and he gave me some really great pointers on design the man within, as far as some of the things he thought really hit home for every man out there. And one of the things that we talked about, it was in one of the chapters called The Realest and The Wolf. And in that realist version, when you talk about the realist, this was a term that I prided myself on, was like, oh, I was, people would be like, oh, you're an asshole, or you're negative, whatever. And many men are this way because we're very logical, right? And in some ways we think that we're protecting people by telling them the worst case scenario, or by telling them all the things that could go wrong. And then we classify ourselves as realists. Like, we're just like, oh, I'm a realist. Like, that's where I bring balance to people. And a lot of people don't see it that way. Not only do they not see it that way, a lot, what I came to find out, and what I have found out since, as I've coached men for the last few years, is that when you're uh, pretending to use that statement of being the realist, or being the balance, however you want to call it, the grounding energy, whatever you want to call it, a lot of things that are really resulting from that are the fact that you're um, being negative because you're fearful. You're fearful of, if that person grows past where you are, or grows out of your circle and opens themselves up to a life that they believe is the best life for them, what's going to happen is they're going to leave you behind. So there's an abandonment issue here, in a lot of ways. And then on top of that, what it also means is that there's a lot of men out there who are struggling with the fact that, other people don't want to be mediocre. Now, I know that that's a triggering like concept to a lot of men, to call you mediocre right now, but most of you guys are living that way. And I know that. I've lived that way a lot in my life, in certain aspects. Obviously, being elite in special operations was not one of those, but being average in other areas of life that I want to excel at and be elite in, I have to transfer the mindset of when I was elite to those aspects of my life. And until I did that, until I took it seriously and painted the picture that I needed to, utilize my mindset and skill set from when I was a ranger to the other things in life, when I finally painted that picture of myself for myself, I saw that I was living average, and I was very much in the mindset of, well, average is easy and it's simple and it takes very little effort. And so why not stay there? Because average is like, I'm not struggling, but I'm not fucking raking in millions of dollars, or I'm not able to go on all the trips I want to go on, right? But I can take like maybe one a year, or maybe not even that, right? But you're not hurting for money. You're not hurting in your lifestyle. You're not living in a box. You're not hurting necessarily in your relationships, but they're average. Everything's average in your life. And a lot of that just doesn't take much of an effort. You can almost just merely exist, and as you exist, like, you can just retain that lifestyle. And so the man that wants to stay mediocre because it's simple, that is the man I'm talking to. And that, unfortunately, is a majority of men out there. And we convince ourselves that we can live basic and be happy in that. And I think to some extent there is some truth to that for a very very small group of people. I think there's truth to it for a very small group of people, and then for the majority of men that want to say that, I think hypothetically this is a like a if the world ended kind of thing, they could pull it off. But other than that, realistically, to live your fullest, most authentic and life that you are just absolutely in love with, that is not the truth. It's just not. Most guys don't want that. They want the nice things that they want. They want the nice houses. They want the nice vacations. They want the cars. They want to be able to buy whatever they want when they go out and not have to worry about bills. They want all of those things. And that is a lot more than mediocrity. And so the king of average is those men, is the majority of men who are just so comfortable with simplicity and mediocrity that they don't want to push themselves past anything that's uncomfortable, because the relative discomfort in maybe having to concern themselves over bills, or maybe not being able to do all of the things they want to do, or look at every time they spend money what their bank account's at. Those guys have learned to live with that little bit of discomfort, as opposed to putting themselves in extreme discomfort to get something that's vastly better. And so this is where I find the king of average. This is where he sleeps, man. This is his lifestyle. This is what he wants. This is the majority of men I see in the world today. And I speak with today. And most guys are so fed up with it, which is why they come and talk to me anyways. But most guys are so fed up with it because the fact that they really do deep down, they want something more. They want a better life, but they can't admit it to anybody else except somebody that they pay to be a coach, or somebody they're paying to be a therapist, or when they're fucking hammered. Like, that's about it. That's about the only time they're going to expose that vulnerability, because to expose that says that they are failing right now. So there's a lot that's intertwined with this king of average. There's a lot that's intertwined with this mediocrity, because it's also tied to our ego. It's also tied to our vulnerability. It's also tied to our masculinity. It's also tied to the way we perceive ourselves, because if we start to say that we're failing, well, now we just get to become a harsher critic on who we are and how we exist in their life. So at the end of the day, what we're really looking at is that they're fearful of the their fear. Most men are fearful of trying because of their ego and because of their pride, right? And so they don't want to jump in to the fact that if they want something more, they have to do something different. If they want something better, they have to do something different. They have to try, they have to put themselves out there, they have to put risk, they have to feel discomfort, significant discomfort, because you're not going to feel good when you start something brand new. Like, that is going to be it. But at the end of the day, most men are unwilling to do this. So what do? They sit there and they go, hey man, when they hear their friend speaking up about something good in his life, and how he's like seeing a trajectory forward and how there's greatness on the horizon, they want to be the realist. They want to bring him back down. You know, there's that old quote, or that old, saying, where people talk about, like, the crab, when the crab tries to get out of the bucket, all the other crabs try to pull him back down. That you're that crab. When you're that guy, you're that crab. You're those crabs. And I've been that guy. Again, you guys know this. If I'm talking here on YouTube, if I'm talking to my podcast channel, if I'm putting something out at all to social media, I'm not putting shit out because of the fact that I haven't been through it. I have seen myself be that guy. And it's not fun when you realize you're that guy. It just really isn't, because the first thing you come to terms with is you find out that you love mediocrity, and that's not a good feeling. And then the second thing you realize is that you're not being a supportive friend. You're not being somebody that people want to come to and hang out with anymore, because the fact that is when they're having good, you're there for them when they're having bad shit happen, because you're like, oh, cool. Like, I can do the bad shit because that's all that happens for me. But when the good shit happens, you just want to bring everybody back to the bad shit. And so they don't want to be around that. And a lot of people just don't want to be around that. I hear wives complaining about this. I hear girlfriends complaining about this. And then I hear men complaining about this, of other men, of men in their circles, of their brothers, like actual legitimate siblings, and then also their brothers that are their friends, right? And so, like, I hear this stuff all the time, and this was something I experienced. So when I came to terms with this and realized that I was living that king of average, right, I started to be like, okay, wow. First thing is, when this thing comes up in my mind, when I want to say something negative to somebody, you're not saying negatively, being derogatory, or you're not saying it negatively because you're insidious with it. What you're saying it negatively about is because the fact that you're pretending as if you're trying to prepare them for the worst case scenario, so if it happens, they're going to be ready. And so this is how I justified it to myself. But when I realized I was doing this and it wasn't helpful for anybody, because if you put them in that mindset, they're not going to achieve what they want to achieve, because now they're thinking about the negative, right? And then you're probably also just doing that in your life, so you're not achieving good stuff, all of those things. So what I started doing was asking myself, well, what is it that I want to say right now that's negative, and then what can I switch that to that's a positive thing? How can I say something that's nice to them, right? And so the first thing is you got to check your thoughts. You have to check your thoughts, and then say something positive to them, because that creates a pattern interruption for yourself, so you stop thinking in this negative pattern that is also not just holding them back or trying to bring them back down to you, but also holding you back. So it's a two-pronged approach in which you're improving your life and mindset, and you're improving somebody else's. And the way that you even start to check your thoughts first is that you just check in with yourself when they're speaking about something good that's happening in their life. Check in with yourself and ask how it makes you feel. Most of you, if you're really honest, it's going to make you probably feel anxious, probably make you feel uncomfortable, nervous, and potentially it's going to make you feel fearful that you're failing. And also think about, like, when those feelings come up, what is it coming from? Are you fearful they're going to leave you? Are you fearful that they're going to make more money than you and be able to do more things than you and have a better life than you, and you thought you guys were peers, and that that's off-putting to you? Like, what is it that's coming up for you when that negativity shows up? If you can start to decipher that before you even get to the position of saying something, you're going to start to challenge yourself to be better. This is literally the first step out of breaking out of being the king of average. I am not kidding you. This is the first step to breaking out of being the king of average. You have to question this. You have to say something different. You got to create a pattern interrupt, not just for your own mindset, but for the relationship with that person, so you don't bring them down, right? And that is where you really start to have power in this conversation. So for all you guys out there that are tired of living that mediocrity, tired of living that life of average, tired of being the negative or pessimistic asshole that people just don't necessarily want to hang out with, like, to include your spouses or partners, like, it's time to change those things. And the only way you're going to change it is if you're real with yourself, if you're open with yourself, and if you start to shift the conversation first mentally and then second verbally. So do that for yourself. Do that for everybody in your life. And I mean, do it for me, please, because I'm just so tired of guys saying this shit. Because I just know what's going through your head, and I know how you can fix it, and I know what it'll do for you if you just fucking change that conversation. If you just change what you're believing and thinking in your own mind, the impact that's going to have on your life. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see y'all next week.